you're listening to the second part of a special election programme here on Wycombe Sound with myself, Bob Johnson. We've assembled all the candidates standing in the Beaconsfield constituency and we'll be asking them some of the questions from the huge number you've sent in to us. How this programme will work is that first of all I will introduce each candidate and ask them to make a speech of around 3 minutes, which we will be timing. After we've heard from them, I will put questions to them that we've received from you and allow them to debate the issues that matter to you. We have drawn all of the names out of a hat, or I say out of a hat, I think it was out of a Tupperware dish. And the first name that came out was Alexa, who is standing for the Labour Party. So Alexa, I will invite you to go first.
Thank you very much. Right. As he said, my name is Alexa Collins and I'm the Labour Party candidate in this election. It's interesting that lots of people appear to have some really strong opinions on why I shouldn't be standing in this election, but I have some equally strong opinions on why I should. So people are saying that it's a 2-horse race, and it's not. It's a 3-horse race. Sorry, Zoe and Adam. People are saying it's all about Brexit, but it's not. It's about a lot more issues than just a single one. And on the doorstep, and let's remember that we don't all knock the same doors. No one has said either of those things to me at all. So if we look back to 2017, I ran the campaign here for our excellent candidate then, James English, and we won 21% of the vote. It was a 10% swing for Labour, far in excess of the national swing, which I do admit. I'm not taking all the credit. There was a national swing. And we came second. And coming second between James and Dominic, they had 87% of the vote, and that's what you call a 2-horse race. Currently, we're looking at a different situation for a whole set of different reasons. But at that election, we provided a voice to over 12,000 voters. And those people still need a Labour voice here. And they still need a Labour government, a government who will save our NHS, who will fund our schools, who will fix our public services, who will protect our workers, care for our population, and who will try to mend the inequalities that divide us. There are areas in this constituency that have been left behind. They've been neglected in an age of cuts. They've been told that things would change and things have not changed. And they want real change to happen in their lives. They want and they need a Labour government to make this happen. There are people in this constituency accessing food banks. Our children's centres are under threat of closure. Adult social care is in crisis in Bucks. People are waiting months and sometimes years for children's mental health services. This shouldn't be happening. These people all need a Labour government to bring real change to their lives for the many and not just the few.
Alexa Collins, thank you very much. The second name that came out of the hat was the independent candidate, Dominic Grieve.
I'm Dominic Grieve. I've been the MP for Beaconsfield for the last 22 years as a Conservative Member of Parliament, and indeed a member of the Conservative Party for probably another 24 years before that. But I'm standing at this election as an independent, and what's brought that about is the fact that I have disagreed profoundly with the way Boris Johnson is handling the affairs of our country, and in particular Brexit. Brexit is important because it's not just some abstract concept of are we in or are we out of the EU, but every single economic issue facing the country is bound up with it, and our ability to provide the public services that people want is going to be dependent on whether or not we do it properly. My own view is that we are about to plunge into a major crisis, and far from it being brought to an end by the 31st of January, it is going to continue through the coming year if we leave. And that's why I'm standing, because I think that the electorate in Beaconsfield are entitled to a choice and to determine whether or not they would like to be represented by an independent MP who's been serving, I hope, their interests properly over the last years, and might be able to moderate the policies which Boris Johnson is seeking to implement. I would like to see a second referendum if possible, but if that isn't, I would like to try to make sure that we keep a close relationship with our nearest trading partners. Also, a lot of local issues involved. I know as my time as an MP that there are major greenbelt issues facing the constituency, particularly down in Bourne End and in Beaconsfield. I don't as an MP have a direct control over those, and nobody who becomes an MP will. But I am committed to trying to minimise greenbelt take, to trying to make sure that the policy is properly scrutinised and, if possible, that the level of housing provision which is being anticipated, if it is not needed, that we should keep the green space we have. But I'm equally aware of the fact that I have many constituents who come to see me at surgeries who need housing, particularly social housing. We also have in Heathrow a major challenge and perhaps an opportunity. That too will have to be considered in the context of the government's national strategy, which has been to approve Heathrow. What I want to see is the infrastructure and environmental improvements, and I certainly don't wish to see Heathrow go ahead unless or until it can meet the emissions targets. Generally speaking, I'm happy to cooperate with people of all parties. It's what I've been doing rather successfully over the last 12 months. I certainly don't wish to see Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street. I am determined, if I'm elected, I will serve as an independent MP. I won't go back to any political party, but I will work with all people of moderate view to try to do the best for my constituents here.
Dominic, thank you very much. The next name that came out of the hat was the Green Party candidate, Zoe Hatch.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, my name is Zoe Hatch, and it's an honour to be here today and have the opportunity to represent Beaconsfield and the Green Party. I joined the party in 2015 because I was very concerned that no other party were really talking seriously about climate change and the climate disaster that we were all facing. And today, in 2019, we face a challenge greater than we have faced for decades, perhaps forever. The climate that we all rely on is breaking down. The impacts are starting to affect us all. The weather is becoming more extreme. Wildlife is declining at a heartbreaking rate. Sea levels are rising, and all of this is threatening our very survival. But none of this is happening by accident. It's the consequence of an out-of-control economic system that plunders the Earth's natural resources to create wealth for the few, casting the climate into chaos and causing corrosive levels of inequality. I think it's time for a new start. So we in the Green Party have developed the Green New Deal, a comprehensive 10-year plan that will tackle climate and ecological breakdown at a scale and speed that is set out by science as necessary. It will deliver a fast and fair transformation of our economy and our society, renewing almost every aspect of life in the UK, from the way we produce and consume our energy to the way in which we grow the food we eat and how we work, travel and heat our homes. This is possible because in the Green Party we do politics differently. Greens put the rights of ordinary people first and the rights of the environment first, ahead of the needs of greedy corporations and the rich elite. Greens also say yes to Europe. We have always supported a people's vote with an option to remain in Europe, but we recognise ultimately that we all want the best for our children's futures and are fed up of being lied to about how to get there. By voting Green, you give a mandate to every elected Green MP to take forward the legislation to make the changes necessary happen. Voting Green is the most powerful vote that you can cast because Greens are the only ones to stand up for change that we all know we need. Greens are the only ones to stand up for what truly matters.
Zoe, thank you very much. The fourth name who came out of the hat was the Conservative candidate, Joy Morrissey.
Hello. My name is Joy Morrissey, and I am the parliamentary candidate for the Conservative Party, and it's an honour to be here today. I just want to talk to you about the things that I believe as the Conservative candidate. I believe that we need to honour the result, the democratic result of the referendum and deliver Brexit. I believe as a working mother and an elected councillor and someone who has just struggled to get by that we need to make life as easy as possible for those who are striving for a better future. And I believe in grammar schools. I believe in protecting our green belt. I believe in fixing our potholes and making sure that our life here in Beaconsfield is as possible, putting the residents first. That's the thing that is at the heart of my campaign, being a local champion, standing up for conservative values, speaking for the silent majority in this country, because I believe it's time their voice was heard. I believe in business and small business and promoting local growth, local businesses, and that's something that I will champion in Parliament. And I think that my track record as a local champion does speak for itself. I was able to successfully save a mental health walk-in centre from closure by working very closely with the clients and the carers, and together we actually made the council reverse their decision and save the centre. I also campaigned for 5 years to save a GP surgery, and I know that GP surgeries are something that we desperately need more of in terms of the population here in Beaconsfield. I also was successful in saving a children's center because I believe that we need to protect those early learning centers for better outcomes for the next generation. So a vote for me is a vote for conservative values, delivering Brexit, and moving on to a brighter future. Because I believe that we are the party not just for the few, not for the many, but for everyone.
Thank you very much, Joy. And the final name to come out of the hat was the independent candidate, Adam Cleary.
Hello, my name's Adam Cleary. I live locally in the constituency with my family. I run my own business as an investment manager. I'm standing as an independent because, like many people, I've lost all trust in establishment political parties and the humiliating mess they have made of Brexit and of our country in the last 3.5 years. I stand unequivocally for leaving the EU with a proper clean break Brexit. The people voted in 2016, and this democratic decision must be respected and implemented immediately. When I looked at the choices before me, I found that I couldn't accept any of them. We have the Conservatives who pretend to embrace Brexit, but actually have spent the last 3.5 years strangling it. They promised at the last election that we would leave the EU on the 29th of March 2019, and we didn't. They promised we would leave on the 31st of October 2019, and we didn't. So I have no confidence that if they win, they will not simply extend again. Voting again and again for this party, for the same party, that keeps denying, delaying and betraying Brexit and expecting a different result is madness. Then we have Mr. Grieve, the former MP here, a man who was put out of his own party, and he thinks he's still entitled to a vote. But he promised in 2017 that he would uphold the result of the referendum, and instead he spent the entire Parliament actively working to stop Brexit in association with his allies in Parliament and others abroad. Every parliamentary device in the book was used, every lawsuit, and he even sponsored the Surrender Act, which is a completely unacceptable piece of legislation. I've canvassed thousands of doors in the constituency and spoken to many people, and they find Mr. Grieve's behaviour unacceptable and a breach of trust. The Labour and the Green Party appear to share an almost identical platform, promising to spend trillions of pounds on every imaginable scheme. Their policies will create enormous costs, debt burdens and taxes on working people and will destroy the value of our currency. In addition, their plans are directly contradicted by their policy to remain. As long as we remain a province of the EU, we are not free to implement any such policies. So their policies are simply unbelievable and unachievable. I think Beaconsfield deserves better. I'm standing to give you an independent choice, the chance to send a message to the party political establishment, to career politicians that you will not be ordered and directed to vote for any party, the chance to vote for someone here based in the constituency who wants to stand up for Brexit. Please vote for me, Adam Cleary, on the 12th of December. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you for your opening addresses. At the end of the programme, I will give you 1 minute each in the order that you have just gone to give a closing address. In a moment, I will be asking the questions that have come in from the listeners. But Adam, I think as you were making some comments actually to the other candidates, it's only fair to now open the floor up to let them respond. Dominic, I will allow you to go first.
From my point of view, I've always thought that Brexit was a great mistake. I think it's probably the biggest piece of self-inflicted harm this country has ever done on itself in peacetime. But that having been said, the 2016 referendum result was an important one, and I voted to trigger Article 50 and indeed voted eventually to pass the Withdrawal Act precisely to try to give effect to it. The problem, however, is that what was being pushed in 2016 and what the Prime Minister, Theresa May, advocated in her 2017 manifesto has proved in practice to be entirely undeliverable. And it was that which has led me to the view that we should have a second referendum, because we're now talking about something which is completely different from what was being discussed then. And I don't see anything undemocratic when you have that kind of problem. The very reason for a democracy is to enable people to reconsider their choices. And as I've said, if people want to leave on the terms of either Boris Johnson's deal or indeed no deal at all, I will happily and cheerfully implement it if that's immediately, and indeed we can put in the legal framework to do it if that's what they want. But equally, if people have changed their mind and think we should remain, they have a right to express that as well.
Joy Morrissey.
The people did express their opinion. We had a referendum and the people said they want to leave. And Theresa May tried to deliver that deal, and the reason that we haven't been able to deliver Brexit is because MPs voted against their own party or against their whip to block Brexit at every turn. And because of the parliamentary arithmetic that we've had, we have not been able to push through the first stage of the withdrawal agreement. And that's why all Conservative Party candidates are standing united that we will all be voting to support the withdrawal agreement to be able to deliver Brexit. And that is why we need a majority government, so that we can do that, because we cannot have another 3 years of delay and parliamentarians believing they're above the people. And this was clearly, the referendum result did give us a clear result. And even if you voted leave or remain, for me, it's about respecting the democratic vote. And that's why I'm standing on this platform.
Zoe Hatch.
So with regards to the European question, I can't help but feel that there's been so much point scoring in Parliament rather than people showing true leadership, perhaps with the exception of Dominic and some of his colleagues, and of course Caroline Lucas as well, I really feel has been leading the way on that. I just want to respond to Adam with his kind of, I feel like desperate lies really around some of the things that he says around spending, and particularly with regard to the Green Party, it makes me feel that he's perhaps out of touch. I was reading an article in the Financial Times the other day which was saying that there was a statement from 163 independent economists who were talking about how badly investment is now needed in the public sector. So to talk about this old economic narrative at a time of such desperate poverty in the UK that we don't need investment just really makes me feel very sad, because I know that people on the streets are crying out for help from their government.
Alexa Collins.
Well, there's so many things in what Adam said. First of all, the whole point about, it's unaffordable. Actually, if you think we can't afford to do this, we actually can't afford not to do this. You're an investment manager. You must understand that this country needs investment really, really badly. Everything has been underinvested for years. And whilst the onus has been moved to private industry, requiring them to invest in return for tax breaks, I think what we've noticed is that they've taken the tax breaks and they haven't done the investment. So there are so many things that have to come back into government ownership and be properly invested and properly funded to deliver decent services. I thought it was interesting the mention of the withdrawal bill, because actually that had already passed the first stage, and rather than having a general election, which I think Mr Johnson was very, very keen on, we should actually be debating that in Parliament at the moment, and people should be properly scrutinising it and discussing what's going to happen with it. It may have passed the first reading. It possibly wasn't going to pass a second reading or go through the upper house. And I'm sure that Dominic knows a lot more about that than I do. But instead, for some reason, we're having a general election. So let's all get on with that. On the question of Europe, initially, I wasn't in favour of a people's vote, because I was utterly conflicted about the idea of democracy, and that we'd had a referendum and it had been decided. Well, I was very disappointed about the way the referendum was handled. I don't think it was ever taken seriously. I don't think anyone ever thought it would go the way that it did. And as a result, the right structures were not put around it. It was there as a very simple majority on a very, very complicated question. There should have been better and more rigorous controls about that kind of thing. So we are the only party that are actually offering a people's vote. We want to, sorry Zoe, apparently the Greens are as well, and Dominic as an independent is obviously very keen on a people's vote, but we are offering to take this back to the people with a properly negotiated, sensible deal that protects jobs, that protects the economy, and actually has a Remain option on the ballot as well, and we will take it back to the people for a final say.
Adam Cleary, would you like to respond to what you've heard?
Yes, I mean, a second referendum is a democratic outrage. No second referendum can be held until the first one has been implemented. It's absolutely unacceptable and would be a breach of trust with the British people to say, we don't really like this. The Remainers, large corporations, large banks who funded the Remain campaign, all the political party establishment who don't like this challenge to their authority. We don't like that Leave vote. The people voted to leave, but we're going to try and stop it and strangle it. So we'll put forward this second referendum idea on a basis of a series of specious ridiculous arguments. It's an absolute democratic outrage and totally unacceptable, and it will destroy the fabric of democracy, of the rule of law, of people's consent, of the consent of the governed. So if we don't implement democratic elections, democratic referendums, then people will take note and will say, oh, well, then we don't live in a democracy, do we? And that is not a message I want to send to 17.4 million and more people who are outraged that the referendum has not been implemented almost 4 years on from being passed by the British people in 2016.
Adam, thank you very much. Let's move on now to the questions that we have had in their hundreds from Wycombe Sound listeners. The first question comes from Keith, who asks, what do you propose to do about the closure of Burnham Park Academy, which has left Burnham children who do not pass the 11 plus without a local school? I'm going to go to Zoe for this one first.
Thank you. So it's an outrageous situation in Burnham for anybody who isn't familiar with it. The only secondary or non-selective school in Burnham has been closed. It was a very sad situation. A lot of children now don't have schools to go to or have had to move to schools in various different other areas, which puts a burden on their travel time, and that whole community has been separated. There's a selective system for the for grammar schools in that area. My son actually now goes to a school in Maidenhead, which is across the boundary. So I think that what we need to do is look at these academies that have been set up, because they're obviously failing the children and they're not delivering in the way that they need to be. And that would be a Green Party policy. We would put the power for education back in the hands of local people through local government situations that would be properly and well funded. What's happened at the moment with people sort of having a problem with local government is that it's not well enough funded, because funding has been so badly centralised, or money has been put into these academies. So obviously that's something that would need to be looked at very carefully going forward.
Adam Cleary.
Yes, I mean, I've been canvassing in Burnham and have learnt about this issue, and clearly it's unacceptable the way in which Burnham is effectively becoming an island, because as Slough, Maidenhead and Beaconsfield expand, their catchment areas become smaller, and therefore people in Burnham cannot get into any of the schools in Slough, Maidenhead and Beaconsfield. So this reduction of the catchment area means that we do need to do something to provide non-selective secondary provision in Burnham. I think there is a plan locally to have a merger with Lent-Rise School, primary school, to create a secondary arm, and I think that that is something that should be pursued. Definitely, we should take our lead from the community and listen very carefully to what solutions they want, rather than imposing a solution. But it's clear to me as well that in the constituency, the grammar school system, which I support, but it does mean that the non-selective side does not get properly funded, and I think there is very much a case for looking very carefully at the funding of the non-selective side to make sure that it is improved substantially.
Dominic Grieve.
The situation in Burnham is deeply unsatisfactory. I'm sorry that the academy has closed. It was actually turning round, but its falling roles, I think, condemned it. It simply wasn't attracting in the relevant necessary number of children. The solution, and I agree, and it's clearly the solution the local community wants, is that we should have a through academy, and I think that could work very well. In Lent-Rise, which is a primary school, which is actually a leading primary school in the country and recognised for its excellence, is, I think, sympathetic and eager to be the foundation stone of it, and such a through academy could be opened on the site of Burnham Park Academy, although I have to say, looking at the buildings, I think they are going to need to be replaced. So this is going to be a major project if it's to go ahead. I'm very much in favour of that happening and will campaign to bring it about. The first thing is the securing of the site. I don't wish to exaggerate my own role because, as I've said on many occasions, MPs can ask for things, they can't command them. But certainly I've lobbied the County Council to secure the site's future, to make sure it's not sold off for development. And I think we have got that assurance so that we have a site onto which we could move if we can take things forward. We now need to lobby the Department of Education to see whether we can build up the momentum necessary to have a through academy. Can I just then say something about grammar schools? I'm a trustee of the Beaches Learning Trust, which also operates in the same area and is centred around Burnham Grammar School. Actually, the future lies in close joined-up working between grammar schools and non-selective secondaries. You've already got really good examples of that happening in Marlow between William Borlase Grammar School and the Great Marlow School, which is a centre of excellence, even though it's non-selective. And in fact, the creation of this type of bringing together of schools where they cooperate with each other. Sometimes, in some cases, they actually exchange teachers and students can go from one to another where necessary, is, I think, the future. So I do see the possibility of a real opportunity in Burnham if we can seize it. I think I've got I know who the right people are to push the right buttons. All I can say is if I'm elected, this is something I've already started to do as when I've been the MP. I would like to continue to run with it, and I would be happiest person in the world if we get a brand new school on that site as a through academy and a centre of excellence.
Alexa Collins.
Right, well, this is my area and my village. I'm very saddened at the closure of Burnham Park Academy. I think it has been an absolute travesty, and it is a complete and utter failure of the selective system in Bucks. 15 people put their names down for Burnham Park Academy last year. That's a school that should have 1,000 children in it. It has the capacity for that, or nearly that. And no one will go there because it was in special measures for a long time. The more people that can go, Adam, I'm afraid you're incorrect, that children from Burnham are able to access secondary schools and comprehensive schools in Maidenhead and in other areas. Yes, and they will be squeezed from doing that in the future. However, at the recent public meeting, what was really clear, and I'm not quite sure how the journalist in the room missed the lady who spoke at the very end of the meeting, who said, what we need here is a comprehensive school. And she was cheered and applauded by the whole public meeting. I fully support the efforts of Dr. Gillespie from Burnham Grammar and the head teacher from Lent Rise. And I think that what they're trying to do is a great idea. However, what was interesting, it was all dressed up as a grammar school because what people want is a grammar school because they think that grammar schools are good and everything else is not good. And this is an incorrect categorisation. What we need is comprehensive education. What we need is not a few pupils to be able to pop over to the other campus to take philosophy because the secondary school doesn't operate that. You need a combined school in Burnham. That's what you need to mend the fractures in the community and to bring this about. Now, the other thing that Adam said that was incorrect is you can ask the people what they want. No, you can't, because we are one of the only places, one of 3 counties in the UK where this is a compulsory situation. Everyone else got rid of the 11 plus and selection back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. However, the local government structure here means you cannot open a comprehensive school. A non-selective school here is a secondary modern, and everyone else thinks that they went in the 50s. They didn't. They're alive and well here.
Joy Morrissey.
I think the idea of a grammar school combined with non-selective schools and working in partnership is actually a very good idea. We do need to secure the site and make sure that we lobby the department, or whoever the elected MP is lobbies the Department of Education to make sure that we get the additional funding for a school. We have this issue in Burnham. We also have this issue in Iva. And if I was elected the local MP, I would be championing for better education funding for the south of Bucks, the areas where we have sort of fallen through the cracks, as it were. And because of the geographical location, many people, both in Burnham and in Iva, are lacking the educational resources to schools that they had or that they would expect in this wonderful county. One of the things I'm also very interested in is disability support and better disability access for parents who are struggling, for children with autism, and oftentimes they're applying for schools and they're desperate for that extra support, and making sure that we have that as part of our integrated curriculum, particularly in the South, I think is very important. And also, I think apprenticeships are incredibly important. We talk about comprehensive schools, but apprenticeships and BTECs are very important in terms of skills that we can give people that they can go right into employment. They can build an entire career, very successfully. And we've lost a lot of that. And I think that's just as important as grammar schools. And I think grammar schools are something we have to defend and champion, because my husband went to a grammar school, and, that's when they still had the 11 plus. And it provided so much opportunity for a working class person that would have had no opportunity had there not been that test that everyone took. So I think it is very good that everyone does take the 11 plus, and I want to continue to champion that, but we need to find a solution that works for Burnham and for Iva.
You are listening to an election special here on Wycombe Sound with myself, Bob Johnson. We have all of the candidates who are standing in the Beaconsfield constituency. That is Joy Morrissey for the Conservatives, Alexa Collins for Labour, Zoe Hatch for the Greens, Dominic Grieve standing as an independent, and also Adam Cleary standing as an independent. Another question for you now from one of our listeners, Ian, who says Beaconsfield was one of the areas that suffered from travellers during the summer. What can be done to prevent the travelling community from causing antisocial and littering problems in the future? Adam, I'm going to ask you that one.
I think that there is a statutory duty now to provide for the travelling community, to provide facilities for them. Obviously, I think we have to fulfil the statutory duty. But also many people feel upset by the public nuisance that is caused. So I think it's a very difficult issue to resolve these two competing arguments. Clearly, public order must be upheld, the rule of law must be upheld, but we have to respect people from different backgrounds and communities. So I think a sort of a new approach from the local authority perhaps is called for, and better dialogue with the communities to try and resolve the issues.
Joy.
Well, in my local council, we campaigned successfully for a sort of council and borough-wide injunction for the area to stop travelers from coming into the local area. And I think probably the problem that you're seeing in South Bucks is that so many of the local councils surrounding it actually have now started having borough-wide injunctions, which means that a lot of the travelers are coming straight into this area. So you're probably seeing a large increase because everyone that surrounds you has now gotten this injunction. And I know that Bucks has a sort of statutory duty, and it makes the issue much more complex. But I think this is something that I plan on working very closely with the local council as well, to find a solution that works for our area. And the South of Bucks, we do have a large traveler community, but I think we need to learn how to respectfully live together. And working with the council, the new unitary council in May, I would hope to be able to create policies that create standards by which, trespassing, fly tipping, the things that antisocial behavior that people are reacting to, that we can address in a more effective and efficient way.
Zoe Hatch.
I agree that this is quite a difficult, it's a difficult situation. Nobody likes to see people leaving litter around the place or, essentially trashing the planet. But, I have to say that, we have one rule and we're trying to impose the rule of law for that particular sector of the community, and yet we're not imposing it for other sectors of the community, and particularly the government, who are also creating even more distressing situations with trashing the planet. I'm thinking particularly of things like HS2 or the building of Heathrow, and really what they should be investing in is rewilding projects, not horrendous vanity projects like those two things. This is why people are taking to the streets to protest, because they're feeling desperate, because they're not being listened to. And whilst I have every sympathy for the small-scale trashing of things like littering and, with fly tipping, I know that a lot of different, locally, a lot of different local tips have been closed down. That's another issue that the council really needs to take heed of. But also, with much wider issues as well, if we don't start looking at the bigger picture, we really are going to be having a very difficult problem on our hands.
Dominic Grieve.
The problem we have from travellers goes in a cyclical pattern. When I was first elected in 1997, the problems were very considerable. And then there was quite a long period when, interestingly enough, it tailed off. It's largely driven by economic issues, and if there is employment or work which travellers can do, then they will come into the area. It's possible it's also being contributed to by borough-wide injunctions in London, which Buckinghamshire is in no position to impose. We certainly need to provide the necessary pitches that we have a duty to provide. My other view is that the principal problem with travellers is that the police are involved in a sort of dance, really, where they move them on, but they don't want to move them on too quickly because they know they're going to move on to another unlawful site. I think we ought to adopt the Irish model, which I've been in favour of for some time, which is that you should criminalise trespass with vehicles on private land. This has been an issue that we have gone round the edges of, but we haven't completely grasped the nettle. It's been very effective in Ireland, which of course has a very big traveller community, in stopping some of the activities. I also agree, ultimately, a level of tolerance of people who may park up on land overnight is one thing, but people who use the land they park up on or install themselves on, littering, I think, is a bit of an understatement. It's in fact using the land that they have occupied in order to dump it with tons, hundreds of tons of rubbish, and is part of, in fact, a black economy industry that feeds out from London and from building sites. So it is actually a serious issue of criminality, and it should be treated as such. And I'm afraid that at the moment, I don't think we have the necessary resources to tackle it in that fashion. Some of it is very heavy organised crime. So, as I say, tolerance, yes. I mean, there are settled traveller communities in this constituency, and I'm quite familiar with some of them and some of the residents who live on them, often very good citizens and who are contributing. Others, I might have to say, are very lawless places, which the police have great difficulty enforcing the law, both in respect of looking after children, animals, the payment of taxes and firearms. I think we have to be realistic about what some of the challenges that are posed by people who make a choice of living on the fringes. And the other thing is, of course, the level of educational attainment in the traveller community is something which approaches a national scandal. And ultimately, if we want to bring about sensible change, we need, I think, to pay more attention to that. If people are going one generation to another essentially illiterate, which is what we have as a result in some traveller communities, then it raises questions as to how we are ever going to make them economically successful enough in a conventional way not to have to lead a life which is constantly on the fringes of the law. And I think that's one of the big challenges we've got.
Alexa Collins.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of interesting things here, and a lot of them and us and on the fringes, and like these people are utterly different.
No, Alexa, that's not what I think any of us were saying, actually. They're human beings like us.
I'm saying what I've heard around this table. I think there are a number of different issues. There is a land management issue, and the management of this whole thing. And there is a social issue which requires social intervention. As we know, social intervention at any level, whether that's community policing or social work or anything else, has been cut to the bone over the last 10 years. On the land management issue, I do think that the local councils are attempting to add more pitches. I did see something in the local plan in Beaconsfield where they're going to add another 3. But I think that also, for example, in Burnham, I think that the previous traveller site at Walton's Lane or wherever it was, I think it was sold off and became a private site. Now, I don't know if that type of thing actually affects the prices people have to pay to pitch there or whether they still get access there. I mean, it seems to me that rather than constantly playing this cat and mouse game with the police and the local authorities and everything else, why not actually make some provision which is able to be managed and to be inclusive, to have access and communication with police, with social services, with whatever agencies are required to fix this and take away the them and us. And this is not necessarily people living on the fringes. This is a way of life. This is a type of life that some people live. It's their community.
Question that's come in from Sue, who is a listener to Wycombe Sound, who says, I regularly struggle to get an appointment with my GP despite them increasing the hours that they are open. How can this be rectified? Dominic, I shall hand that one over to you first.
Well, there are two, I think, distinct problems that we have locally. The first is the recruitment of general practitioners, people wanting to come and work as GPs. We know that there's a shortage. That can in part be addressed by better recruitment and training. In part, the EU contributed to solving some of the problems, and very good doctors have come over from European countries to work in this country who speak good English and can help provide the service. But there is a challenge, and there's also a challenge, I think, over the way in which surgeries have developed over the years. And there have been a number of schemes to try to amalgamate surgeries, turn them into proper health centres, which are able to do more diagnostics and more treatment. Of course, there's then often a problem of finding a suitable site, and it can be controversial, as one can see at the moment in Beaconsfield, with the amalgamation of two separate practices into one place, which I think has the capacity to deliver a much better service, but it gives rise to traffic problems and anxieties about loss of greenbelt land. So here is the classic, what we call the wicked problems that politicians have to deal with because they don't have easy solutions. But certainly improving our primary care is absolutely central because that will relieve pressure and should be able to relieve pressure on the hospitals, which otherwise have to bear the burden. And the primary care in this constituency is very mixed. Some of it is very good, but Marlow has had a persistent problem over its GP services. And Beaconsfield has had a persistent problem. And I don't actually think there's anywhere that I'm completely happy with in terms of the ability to deliver a service to a growing population. So these are some quite fundamental issues. Remember that ultimately a GP practice is a rather unusual area of the health service because it's in fact a form of private healthcare paid for through the state system. It ought to be a very attractive field of medicine. And curiously, it has become much less attractive in recent years for people to work in it. And I think there's some quite complex reasons behind that which we need to address. So, and you also seen locally the rise of private medical primary care services, which is quite unusual, but with a community which has wealthy people, it's a sign that they're not finding the service that they're getting within the NHS responsive enough. My view is we do need more health centres. We do need to concentrate and build probably bigger GP practices, centralised with better diagnostics and treatment. And we need to, and that's something which the clinical commissioning group is dealing with. And as an MP, what you have to do is to work with them and the government to try to deliver the better outcomes.
Adam Cleary.
Clearly the NHS is very treasured and institution, and many people are very happy with it. What I have perceived when talking about the NHS with people on the doorstep is more unhappiness with A&E service provision in the constituency, particularly in Marlow, and a feeling that A&E services are below par. And require people to travel too far. And so I think, the NHS needs more funding in order to address the A&E issue. In terms of the health hubs, I think there is a general reluctance in the community in Beaconsfield to have these large health hubs, which are sort of mini hospitals. People don't like losing surgeries, and they don't like the loss of greenbelt land, and they don't like the development. I'm not sure that I agree that this should be sort of forced through because it's convenient to doctors or interests or vested interests. I think that community interests should be taken into account, and that the existing surgeries, where possible, should be maintained in a small scale on a sort of community basis. So I think often. The NHS is asked to do too much, so I think we need to think about what the NHS can do and what the NHS cannot do in a sort of non-medical area. So I welcome more funding in that area.
Alexa Collins.
I think there are a number of issues with why you can't get an appointment with your GP, and Dominic's quite right about the fact they are effectively private businesses, and they have to put together a funding model themselves to run that business, and those funding models are based on the number of patients that they actually manage and that kind of thing. So that's where their funding comes from. The services that GPs offer are very diverse, and it's not really all about popping in because you've got an ingrown toenail or you've got a bit of a cough. Once you become older, and or have complex health issues, GPs do a lot of stuff which is not sitting around for your 5-minute appointment where you're allowed to talk about one thing. They are really key supports, and for anyone who has dealt with elderly care, dementia, a family member dying, you will see the extra services that your GP delivers, which is not when he's sitting in the surgery waiting for you to talk about your rash or whatever. And that's really part of the whole thing. So, I mean, I know that there's this controversy about the one in Beaconsfield, whether it's going to deliver the right sort of services. The CCG are looking at that business case. They think it is going to deliver the right sort of stuff. It is going to become a good provision. It's not in the Greenbelt. People seem to think that it is, but it's not. If you look at somewhere like Gerrards Cross doesn't have any GP provision anymore. So I'm not sure where they're going, but then you'll find that there are surgeries like Burnham who are providing services for something in the region of 21,000 people, but Burnham's only got a population of 12,000. So again, the same thing will happen in Beaconsfield. You know, the provision will be for more people than the actual population of that town. And people don't understand how these services are put together, but it's a lot more complex than you might think. And I love the idea of Adam's community surgeries and small personal service, but this is all about funding. And also with the ageing population, there's a lot of crossover with social care and moving elderly patients from GP doctor's care into social care or back and forth. You need to properly fund social care as well.
Joy Morrissey.
This is an issue I would like to campaign on if elected as the MP. And the first thing I would do is get in contact with the clinical commissioning group, try to speak to the counselors who will be on the Health and Wellbeing Board, and looking at how we can change the priorities that the CCG is actually giving to the surgeries. I think the issue of people not being able to get an appointment on the day. I had an older lady who was telling me about how she was at a surgery appointment, and an older lady walked in, said she couldn't reach anyone on the phone, and collapsed in the surgery. And an older person shouldn't have, or particularly with mobility issues, shouldn't have to come into the surgery to get an appointment for an urgent, need. They should have appointments that both allow them to make urgent appointments on the day and also house calls for those that are older or have mobility issues. And if the CCG takes this as a priority, you can actually encourage the different surgeries to take on these objectives. However, I think we do need additional surgeries in the area. I think community GP surgeries are excellent. And also what I think would be a huge asset to the area of rather we have A&Es that are so far away that are oftentimes full. The ambulance doesn't even know which hospital it's going to take a patient to because it just depends on how busy that hospital is on the day. One thing that I think Beaconsfield could benefit from would be an urgent care, 24-hour urgent care center, which is something that people could come to for minor injuries, other things that they're now going to A&E for, that would allow for close care within the community, but wouldn't hinder people with extreme mobility issues, for example. And it would also take the strain off of GP surgeries for issues that you could actually take your sick child to the urgent care. You could take, if someone has fallen and twisted or broken their ankle, these kind of injuries could be dealt with very quickly. And I think we have to look at also when we're building new homes, making sure that we're commissioning spaces for community healthcare centers. They can be put into a planning application, and then it's much easier to then get that GP surgery. That's how I was able to get a GP surgery in my ward, but it took forever, and you had to constantly, and I actually ended up working cross-party with my labor colleague on the other side in a different council so that we could work together on this one issue. So I know how much effort this will take, but I have a track record in being successful in this area.
Zoe Hatch.
Thank you. So, yes, we all know that the National Health Service is struggling and the situation is on its knees. I'm going to say personally that I have a small neurological issue. I went to the GP about it last summer. I attended one appointment referral where the computer system was broken. So, although I had a nice chat with the doctor there, they couldn't really do anything about it. I've had my appointments now deferred back and once, twice, 3 times, and now I won't be actually being seen again until July next year. So that's almost a full year of waiting. Luckily, it's not an acute or critical situation for me, but I know this reflects a lot of other people's situations. It really is dire. But look, this is, let's not be fooled here that means that we need privatisation of the national health system because it's on its knees. My take on this matter is that we're all being duped on this situation because, of course, funding has been reduced until the NHS has been put on its knees, and the solution is not privatisation, it is more funding. Let's also just look at this model that we've talked about with regards to GP surgeries and remember that the funding model doesn't make that model okay. So when we talk about GP surgeries being run as private businesses, that doesn't mean, oh yes, therefore we should open the door to further privatisation, because we really shouldn't be judging our funding on how many patients a particular GP surgery has. Surely we don't want GPs seeing more people, we want them potentially to be seeing less because those patients are being made well again. I'm really interested personally in the idea that's been piloted in the Netherlands and now is being jumped on not by just other healthcare services, but also by businesses and particularly innovative businesses. And really what we want is radical and progressive solutions here. And this is the model where small teams are empowered to work in the community, and that really, really does work. So in the Netherlands, you've got nursing teams now of ideally about 7 or 8 people. It can be up to 12 people, and they know, they're fully trained, they know what they're doing, but they are empowered to go out and give the care that is particularly needed for those communities. And that then is managed, and that's been rolled out now in that scenario to about 900 teams that are managed by just 50 administrators and 20 trainers. So if you do the maths, it may be that those nursing care situations are costing a lot more, but they are not carrying the burden of a weight of administration. And that's what we would do in the Green New Deal. We would give more funding where it was needed, and we would listen to the people that are providing the care and making sure that they are well supported in whatever way they need to be supported.
OK, we are nearly running out of time, as you might be able to hear from that alarm that's beeping. So I'm going to ask for short questions, or short answers rather, to this question, which I think is another one of those political conundrums that Dominic was slightly referring to earlier on. This question from Tony: the amount of traffic in Beaconsfield, Gerrards Cross and Marlow seems to increase all the time. There is never anywhere to park, there are potholes everywhere, which I know most of you have already alluded to, and congestion always during the rush hour. What would you do to improve the local roads, and interestingly, how do we get less people to use them? Joy, I'm going to go to you first for that one.
Well, I think investing in through roads and schemes that when we are building, that we're making sure that we're putting the Section 106 money or investment up front and making sure that we're creating new roads. Those are opened and completed before any work begins, and holding developers to account so that we do have the proper road infrastructure that we need. And I think the issue as well of the potholes and having to sort of lobby the county to get those potholes filled, I plan to, if elected, work very closely with the councillors, because I think we need to work together to represent South Bucks and make sure that our voice is heard in the new unitary system. The reason we have so many more potholes is we have so much more traffic. We are a busier area than the rest of if you go up north, we have a huge amount of lorries, of infrastructure, of everyone sort of passing through this area, and that's why we have so much more, we need more investment in our roads than you do in other parts of the county. And I think it's important that we continue to lobby for those special improvements. And I'm a big advocate for town councils having the devolved power to sort of work and fix their potholes, for example. Gerrards Cross Town Council has been doing a great job. They've had some devolved power recently to be able to fix some minor road issues. And I think taking ownership of an area is very important. There are some roads in Denham that no one seems to know who they own, who owns this? Does the county own this? Does the town? And no one, and the county does, but there's just endless issues. And for me, making sure that we have infrastructure that works for everyone is very, very important. And that is something that I will be lobbying for. And
Okay, I'm going to stop you there.
yeah.
So I say
Short.
It's
I
going
forgot
to
it was
be
supposed to be short.
shortish
I'm so
answers.
excited I was gonna talk
Adam.
about anti-heat.
Yeah. I mean, I think this speaks to the fact that development is approved and authorised, but developers are not required to think of the broader community and the needs that it creates. And in Beaconsfield, they've authorised this development, or they're fighting it. People say, well, the problem is the traffic. The problem is the lack of the surgeries. So, I think that, we have to have a more democratic, transparent planning process that takes into account the wider needs of the whole community. In terms of the highways, I don't understand why the roads are constantly being patched up, why we can't get to a stage where resurfacing is done and a less ad hoc sort of approach. So I think we need to campaign, have a dialogue with Transport for Bucks to understand why we have this patch and mend type approach rather than a sort of more comprehensive long-term approach.
Zoe.
So, of course, it's not new roads that are needed. People are crying out for a much more integrated public transport system. We know that new roads will just get filled up again, and basically it props up the car industry, which has already been unfairly subsidised. I would favour things like cycling schemes at schools, and really, not just tokenism, but actually encouraging children at an early age, encouraging all of our community to cycle. People do want to make individual changes. They recognise the desperate situation that we're all in. And it's not just about climate change, it's about air quality, it's about pollution, and it's about children having to breathe in these fumes on a daily basis, which is causing problems for their health. But it belies the government to take the lead on this issue, because we cannot do it alone, and we cannot do it without system change.
Alexa?
Oh, well, there's lots of things here. The more cars on the road is why we have more potholes. No, it's not. The reason we have more potholes in Buckinghamshire is because our county council haven't got any money. Several years ago, they opted to they volunteered to get rid of the government grant before they even had to. So for the last 4 years, their government grant has been reducing by 25% each year. This is the first year they have no government grant at all. But they did invest in a patch and mend machine, so that's why they go around fixing little individual potholes, which they do quite efficiently, I would say. But the reason is because they haven't got enough money to resurface the roads. The devolved services and moving that responsibility to town councils is an utterly ridiculous idea. The town councils don't have the knowledge, the expertise, or the staff to do it. Again, what that's about is government finance, because if you move the devolved service to the town council, you move the responsibility there, you give them some money to do it, which is not quite enough for them to actually deliver the service. But the town council will then put that onto their precept, which takes it out of your council tax precept, so it doesn't appear on that bit of the bill, and it moves onto a different bit of the bill, which is under a whole different set of how you do the rules. So they could probably avoid a precept referendum on putting your council tax up, because they need to save money everywhere they do. They're £86 million in the red this year, which is about the amount of funding that they used to get each year when they had a government grant. So I do get that there is a problem with traffic, and what we need is a decent, sustainable local public transportation system, electric buses. I used to be able to get a bus from Burnham when I was a kid up to Beaconsfield. You cannot get a bus. As Adam mentioned earlier, Burnham's become an island. You can't get anywhere in the county by bus. It takes you hours.
Dominic Grieve.
Two basic problems. Unless the statistics have changed, we have the highest level of car ownership in the United Kingdom per household. And this has been the case, I think, throughout my time as the MP. Sometimes you see 6 cars parked on people's forecourts. The county is strapped for cash. When I was first elected in 97, 36% of its money was spent on child and adult social care. It's now hitting 60. That's why we cannot repair our roads. And it's also right that the road repairs that are being carried out, pothole filling is all very well, but it's not a permanent solution. You need to have a resurfacing programme. And nationally, it's billions of pounds that we have slid behind on this. I'm all in favour of trying to bring in buses, but I simply say this note of caution. I think during my courses and time as an MP, I brought in a couple of bus services at the request of constituents. Both have lasted about 18 months before they were abandoned by the bus service provider on the basis they were not economic. It would be a revolutionary change in our affairs if we succeed in moving people onto buses on a more permanent basis. I'd love that to happen. Wholly in favour, just as I am about cycle routes. In the meantime, we do have to be pragmatic. Road building is in itself a problem, but nobody asks me to plough up the M40, even though it has a major environmental detraction from the area that I represent. It hasn't yet happened, or the M4 for that matter. The Ivor Relief Road is needed. It may be polluting if we have the Relief Road, but let's be polluting the Relief Road and not Ivor High Street, which is now virtually uninhabitable, with lorries trying to get through narrow gaps which are wholly unsuitable for it. So one needs to be pragmatic in relation to our solutions. But I certainly agree, if we continue to be as motor car dependent as we are, we're going to have to spend an awful lot of money on repairing our roads. And at the moment, where we are both increasing the number of motor vehicles and above all big vehicles like SUVs, which pollute enormously and also damage the road surface more because they're heavier and people seem to be attracted by them. 39% of all car ownership is now these big cars. So there are some quite big issues here. And they're not easy to solve, but I think the sensible thing for whoever is elected as the MP of this constituency is you've got to be pragmatic and look to deal with problems as they arise. The Ivor Relief Road is one that we can take through. There may be other things that need doing. Getting a better budget for pothole repair is undoubtedly a good idea.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for your responses, and thank you also to everyone who has emailed in and all the various other ways that you can contact Wycombe Sound with your questions. As promised now, at the end of the programme, I'm going to give you a minute each to tell us why we should vote for you in the general election, which of course takes place on the 12th of December. And as promised, I will go in the order that we started. So Alexa, I'm crossing over to you first. We'll give you 1 minute. And again, we will be timing this.
Great. I got so involved in the discussion, I totally forgot about this. So I am a local candidate. I've lived here for most of my life. I have also lived around the world for some of my life, and I can bring that knowledge and that global experience to a local constituency. I am involved in many things within the constituency. I'm an education campaigner. I'm involved in wanting to bring about real change here, and will work my very, very hardest if elected.
Dominic Grieve.
If constituents and electors in Beaconsfield are concerned about the current trend of politics, and in particularly the polarisation of the two major political parties, and if they're concerned about the country's future because of the enormous and frankly revolutionary changes which are taking place as a result of Brexit, then I would hope that they would consider voting for me, because I offer some continuity. I offer what I believe to be moderate and pragmatic politics, and a willingness to work with others on a cross-party basis to try to deliver outcomes. It's what I've been doing increasingly in the last 3 years, and it's what has put me at variance with my own political party, so that I'm now standing as an independent. I think that because of my experience, I'm capable of delivering local services for people and to do it well, and I'm experienced at doing it. But it's a matter of the electorate's choice. It would be a great privilege to be able to continue representing Beaconsfield, and I would be delighted to do so.
Zoe.
So with regard to pragmatism, and let me just think for a moment about the fact that science says that we need to change our ways or face societal collapse and possible extinction. And we are seeing extinction at a rate of 100 to 200 species a day already. The crisis is already here. In the Green Party, we want to unleash a green revolution that lifts up everyone. Our plan for a Green New Deal will transform the UK and improve the quality of everyone's lives by creating a safer and fairer future for all. And in the current crisis, that is the pragmatic solution that is needed. We are the only party you can trust to tackle climate change. We're the only party that you can trust to stand up for remaining part of Europe and for a final say on Brexit. whilst at the same time listening to and addressing the reasons why people voted to leave. And we are the only party that you can trust to fix our broken democracy. So please, the choices we make now are like never before. This is a serious situation. On the 12th of December, I would ask you to vote with your heart and to vote for what matters and what you believe in. So please vote
that is
Green.
60 seconds. Joy?
As the Conservative Party candidate, I pledge to help deliver Brexit, to make sure that we honor the democratic result of the referendum, to increase funding to the NHS, to fix our potholes. I think that's probably the first manifesto that was mentioned. So it's great, works very well for Beaconsfield. And to be a local community champion, to work to get better GP surgery access, to make sure that our schools are supported, to defend our grammar schools. And on green issues, I am opposed to Heathrow expansion, and I will be fighting to stand against HS2.
And finally, Adam.
This is the Brexit election. The issue in this election is whether we live in a democracy or not. If the referendum result is not upheld, then it will be clear we do not live in a democracy. It is very important. Other issues are important, but Brexit is of supreme importance because it tells us whether we live in a democracy, whether we can hold to account the people who pretend to govern us. The second referendum would be a complete travesty, and it is important, I think, to vote against the political party system, vote for an independent who stands for Brexit and stands for this constituency against the political party establishment. Vote for me, Adam Cleary.
Thank you all very much for coming in. Without wishing to make this sound like the closing credits of Dad's Army, you have been listening to Adam Cleary, who is standing as an independent, Alexa Collins, who is standing for the Labour Party, Dominic Grieve, who is also standing as an independent, Zoe Hatch, who is standing for the Green Party, and Joy Morrissey, who is standing for the Conservative Party. For your votes in the Beaconsfield constituency, a reminder again that the general election is on Thursday, the 12th of December, and the polling stations are open from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m.